welcome everyone. It's Monday, November 25th at 5 p.m. to the Finance Committee meeting of the Municipality of Strathroy-Caradoc. Roll call, Councillor Derbyshire is late, but he's on his way. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, motion that the November 25th, 2024 Finance Committee meeting agenda be approved as circulated. Councillor Hippel, second by Councillor Kennis. All in favor? Carried. Motion of the report FIN 2024-36, the proposed 2025 capital budget, be received for information. So I'll bring a motion. Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Kennis. All in favor? Carried. And with that, I am going to turn it over to the CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just for ease tonight, what we've done is we've put together a PowerPoint presentation with some of the key highlights of what we want to walk through tonight. I think just to start, I'll just talk a little bit to begin with and then turn it over to Director Dakin. As we discussed at the previous budget meeting, we're looking for 2025 to be a planning prioritization year. We have all of these studies and plans that have sort of come out at the end of the year that we really need to spend some time bringing them all together and formulating plans of action for them and prioritizing the projects to bring sort of a fulsome plan of how all of these different pieces of the puzzle work together. So as I said, the 2025 budget reflects this sort of action plan for 2025. I think the focus of our capital and operating budgets will be to complete the outstanding capital works in progress projects, so what we talked about at the last budget meeting, so to undertake those projects. And then also tonight's discussion is to look at those new capital budget projects that are specific to 2025. And what we've done is we're using the same level of taxation as 2024, so that we're not undertaking any of those big projects that we don't yet know how we're going to fit into that bigger piece of the puzzle. So again, looking at tonight, using the same level of taxation as 2024, so that's a 0% increase over the 2024 taxation, which is approximately $3.7 million. And a lot of this is focusing on the annual capital programs that take place year after year. So that is just sort of the overview of where we're looking at and what we're putting forward for the 2025 capital. I'll turn it over to Director Dakin to walk us through the rest of the slide presentation and those key points for tonight's discussion.
Bill.
Thank you very much, and to Council. So basically, if you recall our discussion last time at the Finance Committee meeting, was we had a fairly extensive list of projects that were still outstanding at the end of 2024. Obviously, some of those will be completed, but we're updating as we're going along. But right now, it's looking as if about 24.9 million still need to be completed yet in 25. And what we would be doing is using the funds that are already set aside and collected by council, but not allocated, but not spent yet. So if you recall, we've added that column now to our reserves where we show what we've allocated but haven't spent yet. So that looks after the reserve side. Any taxation that we've taxed for in 24 for these projects would be moved forward into deferred revenue and then used to complete these projects. There is, as you recall, there was a listing of about four projects: the Parkhouse Drive, the 2 wastewater treatment plants, both Strathroy, Mount Bridges, and then also the Skills Trade Center that's being completed here in town as sort of 25 and beyond. And that is sort of the section here where, again, same thing, there is money already set aside. You'll see in the 25 budget that was brought forward tonight, that's being brought forward tonight, there is the need for about 10.4 million to complete these sort of what I'll call 26, 27 projects. They will be worked on in 25, but the majority of the project will either be completed in 26 or 27. So in the numbers for the 25, those numbers are included in the 25 budget. So as I mentioned, staff has prepared this prioritized list of the 25 projects that are being recommended to be moved forward using the same level of taxation from 2024. So if you recall last year, we allocated 3.7 million of taxation towards capital projects. So what we've done is allocated that same funding towards the 25. So that we would see, in essence, a 0% taxation increase on the capital portion of the 25 budget if we go with the projects that are proposed. As I said, there are 4 projects that will require extra funding in 25 and beyond to be completed, and those that's going to be about 10.4 million. It should be noted that there is no extra. This extra funding does not require more taxation, but rather we're going to be using 1.3 million in OSIF grant money, and then there will be an increase for the wastewater projects, the 2 treatment plants of 9 million for those that will be utilized to complete those projects. So as I've stated already, the current 3.7 million that's requested in 25 on the requested in taxation for the 2025 proposed capital budget represents a 0% increase over the 24, but allows, and then also on that allows council to add an additional 114,000 to the future needs reserve as well. So there is the difference between the projects that are listed and that 3.7. There's this basically a difference of the 1.4, excuse me, the 114,000, which would just be transferred into the future needs reserve. So we want to look at how do we sort of break down what's being requested. So the 2025 capital budget breakdown. So it's about 20 million, 20.2 million in projects, excluding those 4 projects that are listed as being 25 and beyond. So if we take that 20.2 million that we're looking for, 500 of it, 1,000 will come from deferred revenue, 8,850 will come from partner recoveries, and that's to do with the Tri-Township projects. We're going to be using 1.4 million in our community from our Canadian Community Building Fund. They'll be using just over $1 million of the OSA funding. We are looking to do 2.1 million from reserves. 300 will come from the solid waste reserve fund, and 1.8 million is from the fleet for the fleet project fleet purchases. There'll be 865,000 transferred to the water reserve fund. There'll be 1.5 million transferred from the wastewater reserve fund. There will be a $9 million loan that will be taken up at the time of the project when the project's completed, and then 3.6 million, like I said, in taxation, with the extra 114,000 going into the reserve, but for the actual projects. It should be noted that these the water and the wastewater reserve fund transfers are not including the money requested for the previous projects that are already on the book. So that, again, like we talked about, is part of that 10.4 that's being requested to carry on with those projects. The next slide here sort of just summarizes what we're looking at. I know it might be a little small up on the screen, so I'll just read through it. So the first line is the 24 carry forward to be completed in 2025, and that's at 24.9 million that we're looking at. There will be no new taxation for that. We'll be using all of the funds that have already been taxed for or allocated but not yet spent. And then we have 23.8 million in carry forward projects from 24 that part of them will probably be completed in 2025, but the majority will be done in 26 and 27. Those are those 4 major projects that we were talking about. Then there's the request for the 10.4 million to be added to that 23.8 million to be completed. So that's those carry forward projects in 25 and beyond. So that will all be used to complete those projects moving forward. So for the 25 request, there's 150,000 being set aside or requested for the council chamber upgrades with IT. So some of the discussion that happened at the last meeting, we've allocated about 150,000 to do those. There's a request from the Police Services Board. So the usual NG911 and a couple of those other projects, but the big ticket item there is the expansion to the police headquarters, the annexation, or the annex going on the back. You can sort of see in those columns the revenue and the taxation. So in there, we're looking for 720,000 in taxation for the police services. Public Works is about not quite 3 million in projects. Just as I said earlier, just less, just a little over $1 million will be used with OSIF. The balance of the 1.6 will come from taxation. Then we move into the water reserve for 865,000 for the projects slated there. 1.5 million for wastewater projects. Again, that's not including those 2 wastewater projects, the 2 treatment plants, one in Mount Bridges, one in Strathroy. There's upgrades required at the transfer station here in Strathroy for 300,000, which will come from the solid waste reserve. Caradoc Community Center, upgrades that need to take place there. We'll be using the Canadian Community Building Fund for those projects. Arenas, 560,000 in projects there. Again, using 450,000 of that Canadian Community Building Fund and 110,000 in taxation. Museum, some upgrades to the office furniture for the staff there of 12,500, and that will come out of taxation. Property management is those 2 projects, one at the one here at Town Hall, fixing the wall outside of the building on the north side of the Town Hall, and the other is 350,000 for wayfinding signage, and that will come out of taxation. Parks, again, there's some projects at Parks. 655,000 of that will come from the Canadian Community Building Fund, and 450 will come from taxation. Tri-Township gave a list of several projects there, and that's where you'll see the partnership money coming from the Chippewa to Thames of the 8,000 and 50,000 in taxation from Strathroy. So that gives us a total of 3.6 million in taxation, and then with the fleet, there's going to be an additional taxation of 25,000 for upgrading the GPS systems in the trucks. For insurance, one of the things that we're finding is with insurance claims, as far as when we've plowed roads, sanded roads, those kinds of things, we now have the ability to add that to the GPS systems on those trucks so that we can tell when a blade is down, when the blade's up, when salt's being applied, all those things for about $25,000. So, and it helps with our insurance claims on that. So that then, when you add the 25,000, adds to our 3.6 above. So now we have the 3.6, just shy of the 3.7, and you'll see the transfer to the reserves for the 114. Just a reminder that those, like I said, those up the top, we have the two categories, I say, I'll call them, of the carry forwards, ones that could, staff are recommending it will be completed in 2025, and then the ones from the carry forward, which will be worked on in 2025, but in all likelihood, the majority of the work will be done in 26 and 27 to complete those projects. So it brings us to our total of the 3.7 that is being requested. So I think what I'll do is, that was a quick run through. You also have the detailed listing that was sent out with the package, so if there's questions about that, any of those projects, we do have the directors here as well to go over those, so I'll leave it with council. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill, and thanks to staff for the work you did on paring this down to the priorities. It's appreciated. Just, mind indulge me a couple of comments that all we're doing tonight is giving direction on the proposed budget. If we need to, after looking at the operating budget, we can always circle around and say we have to find some savings there, right? And then just, for lack of a better word, the elephant in the room, the $11 million that is parked for the Mount Bridges wastewater treatment, that's just parked money. If we don't need to spend it when it comes time, we don't need to spend it. So we're not approving it tonight, it's just allocating that funds, correct?
That is correct. So as you duly pointed out, what we're looking for tonight is direction to sort of include these numbers in our overall budget, and then after that, it will be coming back after we have after council has the operations budget in front of them. It'll come back as a complete package, and then we can revisit whatever we would like. The Mount Bridges and Strathroy projects, my understanding is, and I'll defer to Director Ortiz, but those will be coming back to council moving forward as well.
Okay. Thanks, Bill. Open it up to questions. Any questions, comments? Councillor Pelkman.
So just for my own understanding, basically, by keeping the same taxation for capital at 3.7 million, there's funding for everything except for the police station, roughly, which is 9 million. But everything else would be covered.
So there is, yes, taxation. You just have to be careful how that's worded. So yes, taxation is covering off everything that's listed. There'd be the need for about a $9 million grant to complete that annex, and then obviously the other funds for those 4 projects moving forward that were sort of in the carry forward. So the Park House, the 2 wastewater treatment, and the Scott Street sanitary, those 4 projects would be covered off with non-taxation money, but would be required to be increased as well. So as you can see, for instance, for the Queen Street reconstruction, there's a request for another 1.3 million. That's being completed in 2025. That'll be coming out of the OSIP money. And then another 5 million is being requested for Mount Bridges, another 4 million for Strathroy, and then 50,000 for the Scott Street. All of those extras for those projects are coming from non-taxation, correct?
Councillor Wilsey.
Just a point of clarification on Councillor Bulkman's question. You talked about the 9 million coming from a grant. Did you mean loan by that for the police station rather than a grant? Because your sheet says a loan.
Sorry, if I said grant, I meant loan. My apologies.
And the other question is on the 9 million for the water and wastewater. I know they're non-taxation, but currently the wastewater reserve is 3.5 million over allocated. So we spent 3.5 million more than we've collected already. In 2023, we only added $8,000 to that reserve. And by approving this tonight, we're going to change that over allocation to 12.5 million. So just if we approve that tonight, council, I know we have to spend that money, but that is, we're going to have to come up with, we made $8,000 in our wastewater treatment reserve in 2023, which is the last numbers that we have available. I think the next ones are coming the next meeting, so next week, so we'll know what we did in 2024. Or no, that's still 2023. So we don't know how much we put in 2024. But in 2023, we put in $8,000 to that reserve, and we're about to approve $9 million to come out of that reserve that already has $3.5 million. So our wastewater rates to be able to do this are either going to have to cover loan payments or extra things to cover $12.5 million over and above what we're already at, because we're not collecting enough on wastewater to pay our loans and go forward. But I've got other questions, but I'll let somebody else go first.
No, do you mind if I follow up on yours though? When Councillor Wilsey says spent, was that actually spent or allocated dollars? So like the money that we allocated previously for Mount Bridges and Strathroy. I think that's correct, Councillor, that it's allocated money, not spent?
Yeah, I said allocated, not spent. So the wastewater reserve now is over allocated. It's not overspent. There's still money there.
Over allocated, okay.
But if we look at the numbers and the projects that are there, we have $15 million in allocated projects in wastewater before we approve anything tonight. All of those projects were approved in 2017 to 2020. So those estimates we used for that are 5 to 7 years old. So if you look at that, that 15 million is probably going to take $30 million to complete before we do anything else tonight. So yes, it's great that we have money in reserves. We don't have nearly enough money in reserves to complete the projects that we've committed to complete.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, considerations? Go to Councillor Brennan, then you can.
Yeah, I've got 3 or 4 more.
Okay, yep.
Okay, I guess we're allowed to get specific at this point then, I guess.
Yes, we are.
Okay, I'm looking at the Campbellville Park for $450,000. You know, it's not a defined urban area. It's not in our Parks Master Plan. It's not in our strategic plan. And then I look over Collins Way and I look at the South Grove Park that we had basically planned to do, but we haven't. And it's sitting there uncompleted in an urban area with maybe a much larger number of dwellings around it. And the South Grove, I think, to complete its around, and I'll go through the mayor to the Director of Recreation, would it be about $350,000 to finish the South Grove Park, Director Lilborn?
Through the chair to Councillor Brennan, the estimated cost of that park was $350,000. There's currently $250,000 allocated to go towards that park. $100,000 was to come from the developer, but that had changed during a meeting when the stormwater management pond was discussed, and that $100,000 is no longer coming to the municipality for that park.
So I guess a follow-up then to the director. How much money would be required to finish that park at this point then, approximately?
Through the chair to Councillor Brennan, we need an additional $100,000 to execute the current design of that park.
Thank you for that. I guess my question to council, and I won't put it in the form of a motion at this point, but we're putting in a new park in Campbellville when we have one in Collins Way that's been on the books for a while. And I'm wondering, should we pull the Campbellville Park and insert the South Grove Park, or should we add South Grove Park for another $100,000? But I think with the idea of like maybe we should be finishing the parks that we've planned on before we start initiating a new park that seems to have just spontaneously emerged in our planning. That's my question. Thank you.
Oh, go ahead, Councillor Hippel, and then Councillor Brennan knows I'll have a follow-up to his question.
Through yourself, just as a comment to Councillor Brennan, I was going to ask a similar question to that, because we have been working for a very, very long time, and the people in Collins Way have been there for well over 10 years waiting on this, and our Director of Recreation has been working with the residents, with council, and we've been all going back and forth trying to get this, and the developer, to get this going. And I would definitely agree with Councillor Brennan that if we're gonna, there's so many things on this list, but I mean, if we're just gonna look at this particular area, I would agree. I mean, if we've got something that we've started, we really should be finishing it instead of going somewhere else and starting something brand new.
Councilor Derbyshire.
Thanks, I'm just gonna chime in on this whole thing. I don't know why you don't do them both. If you got 250 set aside and you negotiated 100,000 away, that's not really, that went with the deal. Build a $250,000 park there, build the one at Campbellville. There's a project that's easy to do right there. You know, if the $100,000 was for a gazebo, I guess we don't get a gazebo yet. So that would be my suggestion, do them both. I mean, if the money's here for this, the money's already allocated, sitting somewhere for the other one, just do both of them.
Councilor Palmer.
I think though that it's important that we, as Councillor Brennan pointed out, that it wasn't on the master plan. I'm just curious to the director, I don't recall seeing this before, so how did it appear in 2025? What led up to the decision to put a $450,000 playground in Campbellville?
You can bring up my name, Director, feel free.
Through the chair to Councillor Palmer, this was a request of the mayor's.
And I can answer that now. So we own a piece of land in Campbellville that has been allocated for a park, so the fact that it may have not been on the park's master plan, I'll suggest there isn't a park for Melbourne on the master plan either, and someday they may want a park too, but we do own a piece of land there that was set aside for a park. It was part of the development. I can't speak to the cost of the playground, but we did start last year cleaning up the tract of land. It's overgrown. Excuse me, trees are falling down, and the residents did request how it didn't get on the master parks plan. I don't know. When we own a piece of land there, I'm gonna suggest it was maybe should have been on there, and hope Councilor Brennan doesn't mind the fact that it's not a large urban area. It doesn't preclude it somewhere from needing a park, but you know what, if you want to pare it down, but I think at the least, need to complete the site work, because we did begin it last year with funds. We did put money in last year. Director was able to find funds to start clearing the land and need some drainage work. I think that's the minimum that we need to do, and I'm also gonna suggest the people down there do pay taxes, and they did pay development charges at the time that the development was built, so when we do it, I think the least we need to do is continue the site cleanup work. Deputy Mayor.
I'll motion that we move $100,000 from the Campbellville Park line item and move that over to the Collins Way Park to complete that project at the total of $350,000, $250 already being allocated.
You have a seconder, Councilor Palmer. Any other discussion? Councilor Brennan.
Question through the mayor to the Director of Parks and Recreation. Would that motion allow you to finish the park in South Grove?
We're, through the chair to Councilor Brennan, we currently have two designs, preliminary designs completed that were done through operating budgets a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago now. We have yet to go to the public with public consultation because we didn't own the property yet. Now that assumption has taken place or is going to be taking place, we'll be going out to public consultation, no different than we are with Woods Edge. So we will design a park that will fit within that $350,000 range. That parcel of land is extremely large. it's about 75,000 square feet, so it's about, you can almost fit 4.5 hockey rinks inside that piece of property, so it's not a small parcel of land to build a park on.
Question on this, did you have a second for your motion? Oh, Councilor Hammerding. Councilor Pelkman.
Yes, thank you. I have two questions. So the first is about the drainage, because I know that that's a wet area in Campbellvale. Will the drainage itself help an area outside of the park to move some of that water out of there when we have a really wet season? Does anybody know the answer to that question?
Through the chair to Councillor Pelkman, we don't know specifically what we're going to find when we go and start doing creating topographical maps and determining high and low spots. The numbers that we're presenting are an estimate, a best estimate of what we have. So until we actually get a design, we don't know exactly what's going to come forward. So
my second question would be, given the size of the park at South Grove, why would we not design the park for what the park can hold and then build $350,000 of it? That would be approach I would take, so that maybe there can be future partnership opportunities or fundraising opportunities to make that park the best that it could be, as opposed to what we could afford.
Good point, Councilor. Yeah, Director Lewis.
Through the chair to Councillor Pelkman, that's a great idea. Always looking for additional revenues to help offset some of those costs. The $350,000 was a estimate from 2 or 3 years ago when we first started looking at this park based on the size of the property. Do I think $350,000 is going to be sufficient for everything that was planned for that tract of land? No, not today. So it may be at a point where we may need to look at some additional funds. The other thing is we always want to leave an open area for kids to throw balls and stuff around. Now, the tricky piece with this property, it's surrounded by roads on 4 sides. So the throwing of balls and stuff is a little bit tenuous. So when we're designing this park, we need to make sure that we're keeping that in mind and trying to keep the active items more towards the middle of the park and the sedentary stuff towards the outside, whether it's a walking track on the exterior of the park with a bunch of benches and design a fit bench program, no different than we did at Salisbury Park with that development. Want to look at doing stuff like half-court basketball or that type of activity that's more towards the middle of the park development. So to answer your question, $350,000, would it be able to complete the entire park as we have it currently designed? No, it would not.
Any other questions? Councillor Wilsey.
So with the, it's more on the park in Campbellville, knowing we have the land, I've spoken to a number of residents about drainage issues. There's almost always standing water, and water's only a few inches below the surface if it's not standing, at least on the people I've talked to who live around this one. So we have a lot of water to move. If we build a new park here, I'm not 100% sure, and I'm gonna ask the director on this one, on if the 350 would be enough to build the park and do the drainage. And then the second part of that, all the roads are narrow turn chip. They're only about 1.5 lanes wide. If we build a park that becomes a destination because it's a park that's out in the country, it's not in the city, what are we gonna do for parking? What about people who wanna take their dogs to that park? Because I know people do walk their dogs through this area, so there's gonna be dogs and other issues that are coming through there. What are our plans to cover off the dogs walking? People bring, now that we have a new park that we'll do, people will, I'm sure, be driving there, parking on the side of the road where there's no parking because it's only 1.5 lanes wide. What's our issues to deal with all of that, because there's no parking anywhere in Campbellville, and they've said a lot of times that they just want to be left alone. At least the residents, they don't want development, they don't want bigger roads, they don't want more traffic, and this seems to be counter to all of that. So I know there's some residents who want it, but I'm not sure how the traffic and the cost, even if we take the $100,000 off, is gonna be enough to build the park the way it's gonna be a good and useful park and not upset the residents.
Through the chair to Councillor Wilsey, a quick answer to your question is that's why we do park design. Not, where we're gonna park the cars. Those would all be conversations that we would have with the landscape architect when we're designing that piece of property. Talking about the narrow roadways, because those that are coming from outside of the community, yes, will end up driving. Those that live inside Campbellville will, I'm going to suggest primarily walk. It's not a significantly large area that they wouldn't be able to walk, but we would have to figure out some form of parking to accommodate, half a dozen cars or so at any given time.
I just have one last question, if I may. A few times we've taken money in lieu of land. I know in Mount Bridges and in certain cases we've taken money in lieu of parkland. Where does that money reside? Is it in a reserve fund somewhere?
Through the chair to the chair, that money goes into our parkland reserve.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So not having the reserve in front of me, and I apologize, do we have money in our parkland reserve? Because to me, this would seem the ideal situation to use that reserve.
So I too don't have the reserve numbers in front of me.
Yeah.
So I would say, so I'm somewhat hesitant to say how much is in there.
Right.
But we do have money in the reserve, be it $2,000 or be it $125,000, there is some money. But that number I would have to come back to council with.
I apologize, council, but I noticed you didn't say millions, right?
No.
Okay.
If only.
Thank you. Okay. We have a second motion in front of us. All in favor of the deputy mayor's motion? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. Any further questions? Councilor Derbyshire.
So that then leaves the Campbellville Park with 200,000 in site work and 150 in playground installation. Is there any point in doing playground installation at 150? Or should you just worry about the site work this year and get it prepared and possibly, really and truly, I think at that point you should just move it all over to the South Grove thing and complete it, that thing properly. Otherwise, we're gonna end up with a half-arse park here.
I would actually agree with you, Councilor.
Yeah,
Councilor Cameron.
Yeah, I agree. I was thinking the same thing, that maybe what we should do this year in Campbellville is do the site work and perhaps some community consultation. And then come back in the future year with what the community would like to see for a playground. And then we can put it in the budget and we focus on getting the one on Collins Way completed this year and get that off the books. So, yeah, I'll make a motion that for the 2025 budget purposes, we direct staff to complete the site work in Campbellville at the playground site and do some community consultation, and that the remainder of the funds are transferred over to complete Collins Way the best we can.
Do you have a seconder? Councilor Derbyshire, any questions? Councilor Canis.
I guess with that, I mean, I'm not too familiar with that property, but if there's uncertainty about whether you can even put a park there, would it not be better just to spend money to see what you can do there in the coming year and then, come up with a plan and finance that in the years following that?
Yeah.
I don't know, just my thought.
No, do you mind if I comment? I know the property pretty well. I've been there quite a few times. I think at the most, we need to allocate dollars to staff to clean it up. There's a lot of deadfall in there. There's a lot of, correct me if I'm wrong, Director, but at the most, least you need to do to make the residents happy is clean it up more than we did last year, correct?
Through the chair to the chair, I would suggest that if there's any hint of putting a park there, if there's the desire to do that, we need to deal with the drainage. But what I would suggest is maybe we do this in a phased approach where we can go in and drop down the hazard trees and clear up the property. But while we're doing that, we'll get some work done, some design work done on the drainage before we spend any money on the drainage, we would come back to council and say, this is what it may take to do that work. So we're not putting the cart before the horse. So I think we can do this in a stepped approach, if that's okay with council.
I'm fine with that, Councillor. Makes eminent sense.
I think
Yeah, we have
a motion, but I think the motion still would cover it, we just said site work. So I think the director's just been a little more specific as to what we mean by site work.
Okay, you have a
Sounds great.
second motion, any other questions? Councillor Canis, sorry.
Can I suggest maybe like site design or, you know, that type of language, so.
Sure.
Yeah,
the word-
I'm fine with that.
Okay. You okay with that word in there?
Yeah, I more just wanna see it put to where, I don't even care if we get into other than community consultation about the park, because it might not ever work out. Like if it's a wet hole, a wet hole's a wet hole, good luck. I just don't wanna see money put into a design of a park and then we not be able to do anything with it. That's all but yeah, I'll go with it.
Yeah. And for council, my main thing was get the place cleaned up.
I did, well, or I even go as far as say just site investigation if people are more comfortable with that word, so.
Yeah, like I think Don, or Councilor Pammer asked for consultation with the people. I do believe if there's drainage issues, we'll get a hold of the proper drainage as part of the site work and then kind of get it to where if it will sustain a park, then I guess we move forward from there. If it won't sustain a park, then we look at putting a fence around it and you can run your dogs in it.
Okay, are we good with that? Second in motion, all in favor? Carried. Deputy Mayor.
Last year, we took out the wayfinding signage. I see $350,000 in this budget. I motion that we remove the $350,000 line item from the wayfinding signage and add a $500,000 reserve fund to Tri-Township Arena for future upgrades to that building. We talked quite a bit about that recently.
You have a seconder for that motion. Are you seconding it?
Well, I will, I'd like them split though.
Yeah.
That's fine, we can, you can split it into two.
Yep.
Like that way we can talk about them both separately.
Okay,
So I'll just go with remove the $350,000 from wayfinding signage, and then do the other one as a separate motion after, thank you.
okay, open it for discussion.
Yeah.
I saw Councilor Derbyshire second.
I don't want confusion.
Yep. Councilor Pammer.
Well, I'm opposed to that, again, as it was last year. We have nothing really in our budget that looks at any sort of economic development. So this is one piece of economic development that I know the department has been asking for, in terms of creating a welcoming, open for business environment, not to mention the safety concerns of not knowing when you've entered a community. And so I'm opposed to this. I think that it's not a huge amount of money. I mean, it is significant, but I think that we've put it off long enough and it needs to be taken care of once and for all. We need to complete the signage project that was started several years ago.
I'm all open. I want to add on it before I lose the thought for the deputy mayor, the county engineer has identified, and Director Littlemore knows this, as a traffic calming measure. The issue we have is and he's identified when you enter a community like Mount Bridges, people don't know they're going into an urban area. So that's part of the dollars. The county engineer has said, in order to calm traffic in Mount Bridges and in Strathroy, you need to clearly identify that you're entering an urban area. So he's asked for an upgrade of the signs, clearing of the land around it, and planting flowers. So it not only does, it has a safety thing that's been identified by the county engineer.
So I'm more concerned about, we took signs down around the municipality in totality, and put up big blue signs that are wayfinding signage in areas, quite honestly, don't need to be done. In today's world with GPS tracking on everybody's cell phone, if you call in to any 911 and say, I don't know where I am, but I'm here, they're gonna tell you to hit 3 numbers, and they will automatically tell you where you are, and they send help to you. So I don't need to know that I'm at 123 Anywhere Street. They know where I am. Now, as with what you're saying, we put money in last year for a new sign out at Carroll Street at Caradoc. I believe we put money in the budget for that, did we not? You're saying no, it got taken out. Okay, so is that part of the finding?
I would direct it to Director Littlemore. Director Littlemore.
Through the chair to council, the wayfinding signage that has been requested in this budget is what we refer to as gateway signage. So signage as you enter the communities into Strathroy, Mount Bridges, Melbourne, and Campbellville. All right, so that would be the large welcome to Strathroy, welcome to Mount Bridges, welcome to Melbourne signs. So that would be what we're looking for. We're not looking for directional signage to take you to the museum or directional signage to take you to the Gemini or whatever. It's purely gateway signage at this point. On top of the gateway signage is also included in that $350,000 is service club signs as we come into the community. So you'll always see a gateway sign, and then, you know, typically maybe a couple hundred feet further into the community, you'll see a list of service clubs, whether it's Lions Clubs, Lioness, Air Cadets, Probus clubs, and so on. Strathroy has a large number of service clubs. Mount Bridges has a number of service clubs, so does Melbourne, and I'm not so sure about Campbellville at this point.
Okay, okay, follow up then, Councillor Wilsey, he's had his hand up first, Councillor. Yep.
I'll remove my motion.
Okay, thank you.
You have to get both.
Councillor Derbyshire, you.
So, I just want to make one point on it. As our boundaries are expanding, and actually Strathroy's hasn't moved yet, but yet the urban area is creeping farther and farther and farther. So where are you putting your gateway sign for Strathroy? Because first off, you can't go any farther out that way or you're in Adelaide. Out here, you're in Ward 2, unless we move the boundaries. Mount Bridges, we're sitting on the same thing, where if we add the next 100 acres, you're gonna be 100 acres short on these gateways. And everyone's gonna say, you guys were 2 years early. You should have waited until this was done, then put your gateways. Like, I think we're at a transition period right now where Strathroy's obviously moving in all directions, and possibly the next jump is over the creek out here, Trout Creek, and beside the cemetery, which would then put our gateway even farther out there. So before we go and spend this kind of money, like, I'm not opposed to putting new signs out somewhere with some lights, but let's not go super elaborate and then find out in 6 months or 8 months we actually move our boundaries all the way out. And Strathroy goes farther into Ward 2 out this way, and Mount Bridges will go farther that way. So that's the only thing I worry about, is then you have these huge things into town, and they've actually not accomplished what you're saying the county wants us to accomplish.
Did you have a follow-up, Director Littlemore, and then Councillor Wilsey, Councillor Hippel?
Through the chair to Councillor Derbyshire, when we were speaking with the county engineer, he has actually requested that he be consulted on where the location of the signs go, because he wants them to be further outside the community, so you're actually slowing people down as they come into the community. We have some of those already. If you were, like in Strathroy in particular, if you were to go out by the cemetery, the Strathroy sign is quite the ways out of the community itself. Same thing with, I'm just trying to think of the other street, on Albert Street, which it's out by past the old Strathroy Tire, or not, Columbia Building, which is now Strathroy Tire. The signs don't need to be placed right on the urban boundary line. They actually want them placed out further out into the country to promote that you're coming into a community and slow traffic down.
Councillor Wilsey.
My question is why we don't just be part of the county program that's putting these wayfinding signs out on the boundary. I've driven through in the last year. We've got new signs in Melbourne, there's new signs in Kamoka, there's new signs in Lucan, there's new signs in Park Hill, all county signs with gateways, with the town names and the service clubs on every single municipality except Strathroy-Caradoc that I've driven through. So I don't know why we're paying for that and trying to put it in our budget when the county is doing that at every other town in the county. So kind of comes down to some of the same stuff we had. Why are we kidding ourselves when the county's doing it already? And I think we'd want to be the same as the rest of the county. We don't want to be ourselves.
Do you have a follow-up on that, Director? Councillor, I wasn't aware the county would pay for our signs.
Through the chair, I'm not sure the county pays for them or if the municipality has to pay for them, but this has been at this table before. I think Councillor Pelkman may remember. The municipality has gone through a process with regards to branding its municipality. And if you were to notice the signs that you'll notice the county puts up are in county colors and not in municipal branding. So whatever council wants to do, council could do it, but if I can remember my history, Councillor Pelkman, that's one of the reasons why we chose not to go that route.
Okay. Councillor Hippel.
Actually, if you don't mind, I'm gonna let Councillor Pelkman speak to
I
that.
apologize, I was.
And then I have a question.
So just to add some context to that, we had started our branding program about 5 years before the county signage program came along, so we had already started changing our signage. And so it would have been.
Sorry, I didn't see your license.
Signage, yeah.
Councillor Hippel.
Oh, thank you. Okay, sorry, there's been so much here for a second. I wanted to go back actually to, through yourself, to the Deputy Mayor. I still believe, regardless of us not taking out the Wayfair sign, our service clubs have been talking about needing signs for, I think I'm going up to 4 or 5 years. I mean, they're waiting for these things, and these are important to our to the municipality. So I get asked about this all the time. But I wanted to actually first, before I get into that, I still think that it's important that we discuss what you had originally asked for was putting money away. You wanted to transfer money from the gateway signage into the Tri-Township. I don't know if there's a way that we can make that addition, because when you look at all of the other items that are there, I think that's just a topic at some point is going to have to come up. And I know you dismissed, you took your motion off the floor.
Bo hasn't withdrawn it yet.
Okay, I was just going to say that I think something like that, I'm still in, I want the gateway signage because I know that we've been talking about this. I had no idea that the county even did anything like that. That's a surprise for me, and maybe that's something that Director Lilborn can find out. But at the end of the day, the service clubs definitely need the signage. I think we as municipality need to have signage of some sort as you're coming into each of the areas of our municipality. But I think that the money for the Tri-Township is extremely important, so I would like to keep that somewhere on the table.
Okay. The original motion, Councillor Derbyshire, the Deputy Mayor withdrew it. Are you going to withdraw your second of it? Just with the signage?
Yeah,
Okay.
I will withdraw, but I'd like to put another motion on the floor.
Sure. Did you, okay, yep, got ahead of that.
Sorry, I just want to put then on the motion that we look into if the county will supply us with gateway signs, and we don't have to pay for them, then I think maybe that's an option for now. Like, $350,000 is $350,000, whether we like to say it or not, and if it's part of some levy that we already pay to the county to have these signs put there. It seems kind of counterproductive in these times to spend $350,000 just to say we get our own blue and white colors. Like, that would be my motion. Whether it gets seconded or not, it's another thing.
Are you seconding the motion?
I'll second it with a comment.
Okay, second, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll second it, and As far as colors, if we're in the middle of like a 4 or 5 year plan and we're only 2 years into it and we've paused it for 3 years, we've already been 3 years with different colors. I don't think $350,000 is worth keeping the colors. And do we really want to be separate from the rest of the county? Do we want to be our own island? Or do we want to actually be part of something bigger than what we are here? Because we're talking about a lot of things with the county. We are not our own island. We're not even going to be the biggest municipality at the rate every municipality around us is growing. I don't think we need to be our own island. I think we need to be part of a community that's bigger than ourselves.
Any other comment? Councillor Brennan, then Councillor Pelkman.
Is part of the purpose of this motion to determine if the county will pay for these signs? I guess I would like to see the inquiries, will the county pay for the signs, or will the county just put them up and then bill us? I don't know which is gonna happen. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on.
That was kind of my question, is it part of our levy? Like, if it's part of something we already pay into, then I believe we should use that program. If it's not, then we open up this discussion again and say, you know, if they're only gonna charge us $80,000 to put these signs up, and, you know, do we wanna go that route, or do we wanna pay $350? Like, that's all really my motion was let's find out whether it's cost included, cost effective, kind of that way, before we sink $350 into it.
Okay, sorry, Councillor Pelkman was before you.
So I think my comment is more on the process as a whole. And it relates specifically to the allocation of the funds to the arena. There's a plan put forth here with a dollar figure attached, and we're gonna come back and revisit it when we approve the final budget. I honestly don't believe we're gonna be removing stuff from it. I think we're gonna be adding to it. So in terms of the process for approving the budget, I think there's merit in finding out if the county would consider putting the signs up and maybe even using our logo as opposed to theirs. But in terms of adding things, I think we need to see the way that the rest of the budget plays out, and then start adding, especially if we're looking at putting money into reserves for projects that we know we're gonna have to do.
Okay, so we have the second motion in front of us. Any further discussion on the second motion? Councillor Palmer was waiting. Councillor, that motion.
Yeah, I think that we have to remember, if you're gonna go to the county and ask them to put up the signs, or if they have money for the signs, it's gonna be the county signs. They're not gonna be our signs. And we've made this investment of, I don't know how much so far, a significant amount, into doing all the signage in Strathroy-Caradoc, getting it all consistent, so that Mount Bridges signs, the same as Strathroy signs, and now we're gonna throw a county look into it? Like, I think you just wasted all the money and all the time you already put into all this planning. That was done before this council even, all the design work. So there was a plan that previous council had approved. The designs were approved. We did phase 1. I don't think this is the time to change direction. I think we just finished the plan. And yeah, I think I just want to remind people that if the county's gonna put up a sign, they're gonna be the county signs, they're not gonna be ours.
Yeah. Councillor Canis and Councillor Wilsey.
I just want to say, I agree with Councillor Palmer. Branding is important, and I think we do have a brand, and while I live in Middlesex County, I'm more proud that I live in Strathroy-Caradoc, and so we're a distinctive community, and I don't, as any person in a private enterprise would say, branding is very important, that you maintain a consistent brand, and so I think we should carry on with this. If the county wants to give us $350,000 to put our signs up, I'm all for that. Or maybe we just withhold $350,000 from our amount that we send them. But nonetheless, I think we should be having our own signs.
Councillor Wilsey.
My comment was just to clarify that our motion was just to investigate the wayfinding program that the county has. It has nothing to do with moving the money back and forth to the Tri-Township. They're completely separate issues, and I've heard comments going both ways. I just want to be clear that this motion was just to investigate what the county program would be. And that was the whole extent of the motion.
And as long as that's it, is the word investigate, I would agree. Councillor Brennan.
So the motion will investigate, but in the meantime, for now, the 350 remains in a budget line until we find out the results of the inquiry. Is that correct?
That's the way I understood it.
Thank
The
you.
word was investigate, right? Okay, so we have a seconded motion. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Someone, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
So
Second part.
I actually got a motion up.
That's
and then
right.
We split it. So if we could
Yep.
go back to that one, please. 500,000 for reserve fund for Tri-Township Arena for future upgrades to that building.
Do you have a is that a seconder, Councillor Derbyshire? You're seconding. Any comments, concerns, Councillor Kennis?
I don't have an issue with it because we're gonna wind up having to spend that money, so I think we may as well prepare ourselves for it, so.
Yeah. Dave?
And I just want to say, I mean, we've talked about it at Tri-Township Arena Board, so it would be returning back to this council and perhaps our partners, also because we're on an 85-15 split with Chippewa the Thames, so you would know the projects before they begin, if that's a question in your mind.
Okay. We have a second motion. Seeing no further questions, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Any, Councillor Wilsey, you had a couple of questions still.
I do. I'll do them one at a time, and we can go to a couple others in between if we want. They don't have to be
May as
all.
well get them out of the way now there.
First one is the Parkhouse and Troops intersection improvements. We had a study that we approved last year that I know was undertaken. I'm just wondering what we're doing for $90,000 to improve that intersection. Do you want all the questions out now, or do you
We'll
want
go
to?
one at a time. Okay. Yep. Director Ortiz.
Through the chair to Councillor Wilsey. We have some design work ongoing and some other activities related to construction for Parkhouse and Troops.
So what are we doing for, like, I know that intersection. I know that in our roads master plan, it suggested we upgrade the entire section for, I believe, somewhere between 5 to 8 million. I can't remember the amount. So for $90,000, what are we doing for construction and designs that's going to actually do anything? I guess I don't know what that $90,000, because our study last year to just look at it was that much.
Director Ortiz.
Again, there works to support construction for that work. So there's design work that's ongoing, as well as some construction related activities related to potential acquisition of property.
So basically all design and engineering work then, not actually any construction work to fix the intersection for that amount. Right?
Correct. We're not, $90,000 does not do any construction actual activities for next year.
And with, I guess my follow-up to that, once we're going through with that 90,000 and that gets done, how much of that work is going to be carried over if we update Parkhouse in 1 to 2 years and it becomes a full curb and gutter road like the roads need assessment and a full pavement road from the township? How much of this will carry over to that? Or are we just doing a study and then upgrading the road and have to do it all again?
Through the chair, there should be very little rework at that point once we're into construction and proceed with that work. So any curb and gutter, if it's in the works, would be incorporated at this time.
Next question.
My next question is on the 9,000 or the 9 million that we're adding to the Mount Bridges and the Strathroy wastewater treatment plants. I know those numbers were based off of the report that we got for our water and wastewater master plan, but we're also doing an update of our water and sewer rates. With looking at how much we're spending out of our water and sewer rates and the amount that we've got there, even this year we're looking at spending, I think it was like 1.8 million or something, or it's small on here. 1.5 million, which is most of what we put in the reserves. There's only about 500,000 or 600,000 budgeted to go into that. To get this 9 million plus the 3.5 billion we're already short is going to take close to 15 to 20 years if we approve 0 more projects. And we don't expand Mount Bridges past 825 and all the other stuff we know we have to do. Do the new water and sewer rates reports that were coming out, should we wait to see that, to see if we have enough money for this? Or, because it seems like putting 9 million into an account that's already overdrawn without raising our rates, seems like we're just kidding ourselves, and we're setting up a future council to have to take $10 million in debt to fund something that we said was approved.
Either you or Director Dakin can answer on the sewer rates. Go ahead.
I'll start through the chair to Councillor Wilsey. So we will be presenting, as you said, the water rates this coming council meeting on Monday next week. Part of that report, which you will see, does indicate that the reserve funds that we have for wastewater indeed go into the negative for a period of time. That is balanced very well with the reserves we have on the water side. So again, you'll see it when the rate study comes out, but when you look at both collectively, we are in decent shape. So again, on the water side, we're in very good shape, and that balances out the long-term reserve deficit that we have on the wastewater side.
Just to clarify on that, through the chair, so we can use the water reserve to fund wastewater projects? Is that what you're telling me? I thought they each had to be independently funded.
Through the chair again,
I
and
think Director Dakin wants to chime in.
okay, through the chair again, and Director Dakin can confirm. It would actually be, we'd be borrowing from the water reserve into the wastewater reserve. So it would be funds that would have to be repaid from the wastewater fees. So yeah, you are right. Wastewater funds have to be, or wastewater projects have to be funded by wastewater dollars, and likewise. But we are able to borrow between the funds as long as that's repaid at a future time.
Next question there, Greg.
Yeah, I get it. I have to digest that. The whole bunch of new issues that come up with that answer. I'll ask those later. My next question is going to be on the police, the annex. I would like to make a motion that we defer building the new annex. We don't need to take on $9 million in debt this year when we said we're not going to take on any new projects. So I would like to make a motion that we defer the building annex project proposed by the police department.
Second by Councillor Derbyshire. Just a quick question, though. I don't believe the police board has actually presented their budget and made a formal request yet, correct, Director? Yep. Councillor Brennan.
We did pass our budget at our last police service meeting, and I can only imagine that, I don't know if the Director of Finance has yet received it. I can ask that question now. I imagine he has, but Director of Finance, have you received the Police Service Board budget that was passed at the last meeting?
Through the chair to Councilor Brennan, yes, so I do have that budget, and that's why those numbers are now included.
Okay, yep, cool.
Okay, so just ask and answer, just want to make sure that that's on there. And I know that at the last meeting, I think we had a presentation from the designer, and I think the motion was that we would proceed to, in this next year, and Mayor can correct me if I'm wrong, a Class C costing, which takes us sort of like to the next level of looking at the level of detail in the costing of the building. And that's coming, of course, the dollar figure will come to council, and at that time, council can, of course, either agree to the number or send it back to the police service board, a different number. But right now, I think no one's looking at, like the building's not going to go up tomorrow. We have to go through a lot more of the design stages. However, as chair of the police service board, I'll make the case, I guess, at this point to say that the building, which we went up in 1999, has served the community well. Former councils had they were smart enough to put on a piece of land that had a sufficient amount of room that the footprint could expand without having to get more, purchase more land. So it's in a good spot. We have room to expand. The number of individuals working within the building has doubled or more than doubled since 1999. In addition, the dispatch services as well have been expanding significantly. The building is sorely in need of expand a space. If we're going to be a growing community, and our emergency services obviously are going to have to grow with us, I don't know what the alternative would be if we were not to go ahead with the expansion, except that we would end up having to do the expansion several years later and probably at a significant higher dollar figure. So the convenience in terms of budget for this year of pushing it down the road, obviously it makes it easier for this year, the next year. But ultimately, if we kick the can down the road, I think this is something we're going to have to do. I don't think it's a want, I think it's a need. And I think delay will result in, maybe if we do it in 3 or 4 or 5 years, a significantly higher dollar figure. So that's what I would say at this point, without speaking too much toward the motion.
Yeah, just I'll let Councillor Wilsey, I am a member of the board. I think the conversation is proper to have, but right now is not the right time, just because we're here as the budget committee and the police board hasn't been given enough adequate time when they present their budget. The capital is part of it, to present the cogent, coherent case for the expansion. So Councillor Brennan's doing a good job doing it off the top of his head, but I think just it's a little bit premature until we get it, but it's your
It
motion.
shouldn't be in the budget. And
Well,
it shouldn't be in the budget.
Right, that was the question. I was wondering too, why is it
Yeah.
there yet till we, right? Councillor Wilsey, then Councillor Palmer.
I was gonna say, I listened to everything Councilor Brennan said. I've toured the police station. I don't disagree that it's small. But I also heard him say that they're not even through the Class C costing. I have no idea what it's gonna cost. So I think that just reinforces the fact that it shouldn't be in this year's budget.
Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, that was my question too, after listening to where we're actually at. Then I'm not opposed to the expansion, but shouldn't we, if anything, should we put in the budget if there's a need for funding for the cost analysis? If not, why don't we wait until there's a proper presentation and we know exactly what it's gonna cost and put the true amount into a budget in a year that we're gonna need the money? So if it's not gonna, yeah, that's my thought on that.
Councillor Derbyshire.
So my question is, if we leave this in this 10.2 million, that's in there, then we've allotted it to that police service board. Is that correct or no?
Yeah, go ahead and say, CAO would like to chime in.
So council's not approving this document. What you're just doing is giving us direction to bring forward the document for further discussion along with the operating. So you're not approving any of these projects. You're not approving the final budget tonight. You're just giving us direction to take this document and include it into our next budget discussion.
Right. Any other,
Yeah.
Councillor Derbyshire?
Sorry, my question was, if it's left in, not even tonight, the whole way, then we are actually approving that money to go towards that thing. Am I right? Like, if we approve this budget and it's in it, that goes to it, right?
Well, actually, it's honest, we don't approve it till we vote on to go out to tender, correct, Councillor? So the final approval is when we.
That is my question, and I think this is where I get confused with the projects, is we start setting money aside all the way along, right? Like for open aeration, just for example, right? We've approved it, we've moved it, we've delegated this, that, and the other thing. We're taking money and setting it aside for it. We thought we had enough at 5 point whatever million. We don't have enough, we need 6. We think we have enough at 10 million, which means essentially you've approved this police upgrade once you allocate the money aside. I know everybody wants to say, no, as we move through, you can stop the project at any time. But then all you hear is, we've already spent this much, 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 and it never stops because you've already allocated the funds back in 2024. Like, I think that's the trickery here that happens is, you set all the money aside, you're gonna do the project. People expect the project to be done. So nobody stops the project. That's kind of where I'm at here. If you came to us and said, look, we wanna do a study on this, we wanna do a study on this, we wanna do a study, and you approved the money all the way along, then at the end said, to build this is gonna be 6.7 million, because we've already taken off all these other costs. Now we're down to, do you wanna build a police station or not? right now you set 10.2 aside, you've agreed to build a police station, or not station, sorry, parking garage or annex or whatever they're calling it. That's my problem with the way this is getting done and the way we've done kind of things all the way along. We've approved a massive budget for something and then said, well, you can stop it at any point.
Sorry, Councilor Brandon, Councilor Kennis.
Yeah, just a quick clarification. The money that we would be looking at would be money that council is saying is available for a project. The police service board can come forward with their project and it can be in front of us and there'll be a proper presentation for that. Then council has a decision. Do you want to okay that dollar figure for that project? Or do you say, no, you can only have this much money? And then the police service board would say, okay, now we only have this much money. And then the scope of the project would have to be adjusted to adhere to the budget laid down by the council, because it's a municipal building. And we're funding it. And the police service board is going through a process of trying to present what it is that they believe is needed. The amount of money that is actually received is determined by council, and that will determine the scope of the project, but that might be for a presentation down the road.
And Councilor Kennis, I believe you were next.
Yeah, I just look at it as a placeholder tonight, and I don't think we're approving anything. I think it gives us an idea of what it's going to be, and I think we've also earmarked this one as to be totally borrowed for the $9 million as well, I think. So again, there'd have to be a loan arrangement and all that kind of stuff before you got into this project anyway. So I really just, I look at it as a placeholder and not a commitment to anything.
Yeah. Any other questions? Councilor Pelkman.
So I'm not offering a solution here or anything, but what I hear is the issue is somewhat that about 6 years ago, I'll say, we made a transition in our budgeting process, whereas previously we would agree that, these projects are the ones that we're doing. We would take a loan out and then the loan payments would become part of the operating cost, as opposed to setting aside $9 million all in one shot. And I understand why that was done, because as our projects got bigger, there needed to be a certainty that the funding was there for it. It's really an issue of semantics. We're not setting aside $9 million. Councillor Kennis is correct. We're going to take a loan at the time we decide to build it. And at that point in time, those payments will come out of our operating funds as part of the debt payment structure.
Yeah. All right, Councillor Wilsey, then we'll bring it to a vote.
So on that, I just want to talk a little bit about the debt payment and the timing and how things work on that and what we're doing tonight if we approve this. So based on some discussions that we've had in previous council meetings and finance meetings, when a project's done, take for example the Queen Street one that we're doing this year. We don't actually have our first debt payment until our 2025 budget. So we do all the work in 2024, then we get our first debt payment in 2025. With this, we don't even know what the cost is going to be yet. We haven't even got the Class C costing that the police board hasn't done. We haven't got our presentation. There's no way construction on this is going to start until 2025. When it goes through 2025, it'll be tendered, the building in 2026. So what we're actually doing, if we look at this, if we put our debt payment forward and we look at when this debt's going to come forward, we're actually making a decision that next council, which may or may not be the people around this table, are going to have to deal with, because we made a decision 3 years prior, 2 years prior. I don't think we should be making a decision that's going to handcuff a future council right now, that they're going to have to deal with a $9 million debt on their first budget of the council.
Okay. Councillor Brandon, and one more, then we'll vote on it.
Through the mayor to Councillor Wilsey, I understand what you're saying. I've heard that said so many times around this table over the last 20-odd years. We don't want to handcuff the next council. The problem is there only is one council. Council always exists. The people come and go. And the projects and the needs of the municipality persist, and they span over those elections. And so many times, I would say, I'll use the word courageous, but councils have made decisions about what needs to be done, and it can't be done in one term of council. And the repercussions of those decisions reverberate financially for maybe a decade. I think when we first amalgamated, and Councillor Peltman was here at that point too, a great deal of spending took place, and we went into debt, and it affected future councils. But the work got done, and 10 years later, people said, boy, it's really a good thing that we did all that stuff back then because it's so much more expensive now. So I understand the idea that we make decisions and ramifications occur and go out for another 5, 6, 10 years. I don't know if that's handcuffing the next council. I think it's just accepting the fact that council is continuous and the needs of the municipality have to be met. And sometimes saying that we can't make a decision that's going to have financial impact on the next council is an invitation to do nothing. Because every time you get into a new council, you're going to make decisions that affect the next council. So I don't know. I don't know if I accept that argument.
I think we want to bring this one. We'll let you have a rebut.
Just want to rebut to that.
Yeah.
So as a rebut to that, I don't agree. I do agree we do have to do large projects. Sometimes they will carry on to the next council. We've already done that with the fire hall. We've done that with Caradoc Housing. That's carried over onto this council. The two decisions we're looking at tonight is whether we're going to do a $9 million spend that our first payment won't come on until the next council's on. The other thing that we're agreeing on or talking about tonight is by allocating the extra funds to the wastewater, we're actually spending all of our water reserves on wastewater projects. So we're gonna essentially be wiping out our water and wastewater reserves, or wiping out or taking them down to a very low amount and getting rid of our safety cushion on the water and approving a debt. And all of these things are gonna come on to the next council. We talk about spending our reserves and how much our reserves have gone down. Our reserves have gone down by the report by close to $40 million in 2 years. And we're putting another 20 million on that right now. And we're not really adding anything to it. Like, there's gonna be nothing left for the next council. I still think, I'm gonna let my motion still stand. No one's asked me to remove it, but I'm not going to remove it. And I'd like to vote on
Okay,
removing this.
I think we've gone around on that one. Let's call the vote.
Could you repeat the motion?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the initial motion is stated, moved by Councillor Wilsey, seconded by Councillor Derbyshire, that the building of the police station annex be deferred.
Okay, all in favor of the motion? Opposed, if any? Defeated. Yeah, well, I'm looking to you for the results. Motion is defeated?
Yes. It was 5-4. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
On that?
No, moving forward.
Moving on.
No, and on the budget.
I
Yeah, go ahead, sorry, Bob.
Sorry, I do have a comment on the whole budget itself, because it is something to learn that 6 years ago you guys switched to this process. And we're at a point now where our director of finance is begging us to pause, finish up all the projects so we can get stuff in order again. Like, it's this, we add and take and we move stuff, like if this, I'm just gonna use that police thing we're talking about, if it's gonna take 3 to 4 years to possibly get to where it needs to be, it's going to sit there as this 10.2 for that long, and we're gonna chip away at a little bit of it and a little bit of it and a little bit of it, and all the while we're gonna start doing other projects and this and that. And he's trying to move money and make sure that everything's going around while still looking at the fact that we've allotted this to be done possibly in this many years going forward. Like, I think some of what's been done is a product of that system of how you're going about it this way. Like, that's why we have, I don't know how many projects to catch up on right now. You know, at some point they begin to all come due relatively the same time, same years.
Councillor Pelkman.
So the one thing that I do agree with is Councillor Wilsey suggested, I can't remember if it was this budget or the last budget, like the 2024 budget or the 2023 budget, is that if we make a decision on saying we're gonna allocate debt, irregardless of whether or not that payment starts in this year, we should start accounting for it so that when it does take into effect, it's already built into our budget. So in terms of what you're saying, I think that process kind of is a double check in that it keeps our cash flow into check, and that we don't start adding more projects onto money that we've maybe allocated but haven't started spending yet. In terms of the volume of the projects, over the last 10 years, that volume of projects hasn't changed. Just the way we look at it has changed. We've got a very long list of stuff, and we've gone, nope, that page is gone. Sometimes we've done it quicker than others. I think because this council was 5 new people and 4 older ones, we took a much more analytical approach of looking at each item line by line, whereas before we would have said, no, we want to keep our increase to 4%. Anything beyond that, away it goes. And that happens sometimes in 4 or 5 meetings as opposed to 13 or 14 meetings. So it feels like it's more than it was. My experience is the list is about as long as it was 10 years ago. That's never going to change. It's not going to change that things will be pushed beyond this council. The ladder truck is spanning 2.5 terms of council. The sewage treatment plant, I think, lasted 3 terms of council, and it's forming the backbone of the treatment plant that we're still using and still will use for the next 25 years. That's just the way it works. And you know, we know that the amount of money that it's going to cost to expand both systems is beyond what we anticipated when we did the DC charges. So yeah, you know what? Rates are going up. They are going to go up, and that's how we're going to finance the debt. To think that everything is going to stay the same is fantasy land. If you think that you're going to keep the water and sewer rates to basically what they are now, you're living in a dream world. You can't keep saying we need this, but we can't collect this. If you're going to spend, you're going to collect. If we need, you're going to collect. You know, there's it's got to match, and that's life. If in my own household, because I know there are people using analogies about the business world, I'll use an analogy about my household. I manage my cash flow. If I need a new roof, I'm not going to say I'm not putting the new roof on because I can't manage my cash flow. I need a new roof, and that means I gotta change my spending habits, and or get a second job or whatever, you know, or decide I can't afford that house. But you know, the way we've allocated the money has changed, but the spending hasn't really changed, and the way it's going to be budgeted for isn't going to change. It's still going to become part of our operating budget. But I do believe that if we use Councillor Wilsey's suggestion, that once we decide to allocate money for debt, that payment, or approximately what the payment should be incorporated into our operating budget, so that we're not overcommitting in future years. But whether or not that spending spans beyond the next council, I couldn't care less, because if it's a project that needs to be done, it needs to be done.
Okay, I just want to remind you folks, I know we could talk forever, we need to focus on the list. So I'm going to ask, are there any more questions, comments on the budget in front of you, so we can get to Councilor Brown? Do you have a question regarding the list in front of you?
Well, yeah, and it's actually about the 500,000 that council asked to be added to the list.
Mm-hmm.
Where will that money come from? The 5,000 for Tri-Township Arena, the reserve that was asked to be added. Where is that money gonna come from?
We're gonna get another job.
Director Dakin.
Through the chair to Councillor Pammer, so I guess what we'll do is add that to taxation. Unless there's other funds that we could use.
You're gonna pay it, would that place has to last 10
I
more
think
years?
that's probably the easiest. We'll take a look and come back, but I think right off the top of my head, taxation is sort of the obvious.
It's cheaper than Neutron. Yeah.
One conversation, Councillor Wilsey.
So on these items, on the council upgrade, we've got $150,000 for council chamber upgrades, but I know just 2 years ago, we redid the cameras and the microphone, and we spent a significant amount of money to upgrade this. I would like to get more detailed information over what we're gonna do for $150,000 to upgrade the council chambers. I don't need that tonight, just if we can bring that back before we approve it. I wanna make sure that we know what we're doing for $150,000, because it seems like a lot, being we have new cameras and we just did it a year and a half ago. The other question is on the next generation 911. I don't see anything in here to replace the $600,000 in the grant that we had to repay over the summer. If I could get an answer back on why that's here, or where those funds are coming from to replace that grant we had to repay.
Director Dakin.
So through the chair to Councillor Wilsey, so we just received confirmation that we did receive our grant allotment for 24-25 of 1.6 million, I believe it was, to move that project forward. So obviously that is recouping some of that 600,000. So that was the submission that we made for the for the NG 911 was 1.6, I believe, and that's we just received notification that we're receiving those funds.
So as a follow-up, then the $600,000 we were paid, is that completely covered by the 1.6, or is there a shortfall between what we repaid and what we've got, or what we have to cover from tax? Did that 1.6 cover everything that's left, or is there still a shortfall that we'll have to cover?
Through the chair to Councillor Wilsey, so if Council recalls, NG 911 was supposed to be completed by March of 2025, I believe it was. There are 4 services in the province that have completed NG 911. City of London being one of the 4. So 98% of the services haven't got to completion yet, and yet it's 3 months. So there's some talk about that project being extended. So right now, the reason we had to, refund the 600,000 was because of the timing of equipment that we were buying. We applied for that grant to get that supplier. There's 2 suppliers within the province that are supplying all this equipment. We weren't on the short list, unfortunately, so that's part of that 1.6. So that's now being bumped forward into the new grant application.
Okay, so nothing's required from taxes. The new grant covers everything we needed plus what we had to repay from the previous grant. Just to be clear, because I just want to make sure that's what we said.
So through the chair to Councillor Wilsey, so what I'm saying is that currently the project, to bring the project to completion as far as we've got right now, we have grant to cover that. If that grant gets extended out and that project gets extended out and we end up way late again, obviously we're going to have to work with the province on that funding.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Councillor Derbyshire.
Sorry, just for complete clarification, we're only doing 1 year, 2025, right? And that is going to be 20,244,500. Do I read that correctly or no?
Yep. Proposed.
Proposed capital and fleet to be completed.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're looking at right there.
I'll let Councillor, sorry for the demotion again. Director, I'll let you answer that.
So through the chair to Councillor Derbyshire, so the 20.2 is for the 25 projects in front, the 2025 projects in front of you, including the fleet.
Right, so that is everybody except the yellows, right?
Except, sorry?
The yellow highlighted one?
The yellow highlighted is subtracted from that, correct?
Okay. I'm just trying to make sure we're all clear as to what's in and what's out.
So if you're looking at the sheet, sorry, to Councillor Derbyshire. So basically, the projects, the capital projects come to 28.7. You subtract out the 10.4, which is the new money for the projects that are already part of the carry forward amount. So it's kind of new money for the carry forward amount. Then that makes it the 18.3. You add in the 1.8 for the fleet. That gives you the 20,000,000.2. And then if you take the carry forward amount that we're saying is going to get cleaned up in 2025, add to that the 20.2 million. We're looking at about $45.2 million worth of projects being completed in 2025.
Any other questions? Councillor Wilsey.
I just have a question on that one, because we pulled out, there's 18 million, which is what you're looking at doing this year. But in that 18 million is $9 million for the police station. So if we're not doing the $9 million for the police station this year, then that number's not right. Because that loans say that they're coming out this year because it's not highlighted in that orange line that goes across, and it's included in that 18 million. So if we're not spending the 9 million on the police station this year, that number's not right. But in addition to that 20 million that we're doing, we're also approving 10.4 million for future, excluding the police station. So we're including 20 million that they're gonna spend this year, 25 in carry forward for a total of $45 million that staff is gonna complete this year, plus an additional 10.4 million in future years. But in that 45 million, so the whole total together, 9 million for the police station is there. So if we're not actually doing the police station this year, then those numbers aren't right. So I guess we've voted not to take it out, but according to these numbers, we're spending $9 million on a police station this year.
Any other comments, questions, concerns? Councillor Cannon.
Just, we're not. I mean, this is like we dealt with the motion. We have not agreed to spend 9 million on a police station. So it's in there as a placeholder. And this is still a draft budget. So let's.
Yep. Any other comments or concern on this one? Okay, well, seeing none, there's a motion in front of you that council directs staff to include the proposed draft 2025 capital budget as presented and adjusted at the November 25th, 2024 meeting to be added to the proposed 2025 overall municipal budget document for further approval. Someone to bring that motion. Councillor Canis, seconded by Deputy Mayor. Yep, go ahead, Derek.
I'm just gonna be crystal clear again. So then when we go to this final budget, we're gonna pick the whole thing apart again.
We could if we needed to.
Well, you're good.
No, that's
Okay, but then let's, and I don't wanna keep kicking this $9 million around, but Greg's right in that it says we're gonna spend it this year. So if it gets to that, then we're going to have that debate at that point, whether we start collecting for it now, moving forward to this project, even though it's not funded. That's essentially what we're down to here. Do we want to leave it in our proposed budget right now? Or do we want to wait until, are the police services gonna have that Schedule C done before we're done our budgeting process?
I'm gonna suggest, I don't wanna put words out there, but I'm gonna say no, Councilor. I just wanted to make sure I gave you the right answer.
Yeah, so I guess that would be my question. So if we wanna start, then we're gonna leave it in. If we wanna start paying on it. If that's the way we're moving forward with most things. If we wanna wait and see what it's gonna cost or what they're even putting forward, then the best thing to do would be to take it out of here and only allocate enough for them to do their little bit of where they're at. And then if the building comes forward, then we move forward with that process, which will probably be next budgeting season.
Any other questions, comments? All in favor of the second motion? Opposed, if any? Carried. Yep. Next, we're going to move on to the seasonal recruiting report. Motion to receive the report. Councillor Brennan, second by Deputy Mayor. All in favor? Carried. Director Payne.
Good evening, Council. Thank you, Your Worship. Report before you should look somewhat familiar. January of 2024 this year, I brought a very similar report to Council. This is in regards to our 2025 seasonal hiring. So these are all our camp counselors, our lifeguards, our facility attendants, in different student positions, HR, engineering and public works, etc. So the idea of the report and why it's before you today, earlier in the year in January, I brought the report. I'm trying to keep ahead of the curve that's happening in labor with respect to recruiting. So I'm starting to see some municipalities actually starting their seasonal recruiting now. Some of the strategy behind that is if they can get the summer recruiting started in December, the hope is there's a lot of students that are home from holidays, and their parents can be nudging them to apply for different municipal or different part-time positions. So essentially what this report is echoing the same report as in January. No increase in complement since 2023. 23 and 24 have been the same complement for our seasonal recruiting. And this report echoes that as well. From a summary perspective, we're looking at 106 positions, and that's actual hires through recruiting. That translates over the full year. I'll give an example. In January, we have camps. We have camps running, different camp counselors, positions. Aquatics, of course, it doesn't start till May, June. So they translate throughout the full year. So the earlier we can get to recruiting these types of positions operationally, it aids us in getting the right caliber of people getting into the position. So just wanted to share with council, again, same, no change in level of service from the amount of positions for 2024. Just want to get ahead of the curve and just ask for council's endorsement of starting recruiting.
Yeah, Councilor Hippel.
Thank you. Through yourself. I think this is, I mean, people can be opposed to this if they like, but I think this is fantastic. Because I have a child that is this age, and he and all the friends that are done college and university and some high school, this is what they're doing, and during their Christmas holidays, when they're done their exams, they are looking for positions, and they are going to, I mean, we need to get ahead of the curve here, because we are getting bigger, and we cannot afford to be lacking in positions like camp counselors and head lifeguards. And I mean, I think it's just really important that we have these positions in place, because by the time it comes around when the high school students, when we're actually hiring lifeguards underneath the head lifeguards, we need to have these positions in place, and we need good people. We want to keep the people that are in our community, in our municipality, that want to work here, because they're going to go elsewhere. But we just need them. We need these people to be in our municipality and working here, to get these camps to run and get our pool, which is extremely busy and popular, to be able to run efficiently and effectively. So saying all of that, I would put a motion forth that we go with option 3, that council identify, oh, wait a minute, no, sorry. Option 2, if I could get the options correct. Option 2, to direct the Human Resources Director to initiate immediate recruitment for all the above mentioned positions based on 2024 levels, with no increase to the complement of seasonal staff. That's.
Someone to second, is that a seconder? Second, yes. Any other questions, concerns? Councilor Derbyshire.
What do we anticipate our COLA to be? I don't know who that goes to.
Good question. We are entering into QP negotiations shortly. I can't really lead you to a certain percentage until we start getting into bargaining. We essentially give the same percentage increase for COLA to our non-union staff as we do union. So right now it looks like QP will be starting a new year. I can throw some rates at you, what I'm seeing, but I don't want to give away a strategy, obviously, in bargaining.
Councillor Pelkman.
I know a lot of these positions also have revenue lines to them, so I'm assuming that if our cost of labor goes up 5%, then our cost of fees should go up 5% to match.
Fair point. Any other questions, concerns?
Is that?
Sorry,
Go ahead. Go ahead, Greg.
So on that point, I know every year for the last 3 years, I've asked if we can review how much of our community service is covered by its own fees and review the fees for all the programs, not only just the summer programs. I keep getting told that this is not the right time to ask that. So I would like to know when would be the right time to ask that, because I don't want to set the fees and then find out our wages go up and then we're operating our programs at a loss for the year. So when is the right time to ask for a time to review all the fees?
Director Littlemore or Director Dakin? Yeah, sorry, CAO.
We will be bringing forward the fees and charges bylaw. We'll be coming forward to council. And, excuse me, Director Dakin, we had talked about the date. It will be coming forward either our December 2nd meeting or December 9th. We had talked about the date. So the fees and charges bylaw is the bylaw that sets out all the fees that the municipality charges, and that is certainly the opportunity for council to have that discussion.
Okay. Just one follow-up.
Yeah, follow up on that. Every time I've asked about the fees and charges when that bylaw's come up, I'm told I should have asked about it earlier. So this will be the third year in a row that's going to happen. I'm going to be told that we can't change it because they're already set in front of us. So
I think at that meeting we get to talk about it and vote on it, and so that's about.
But at that meeting, we won't even know what our COLA is or how much our cost of labor is going up. So how can we're doing everything backwards.
Okay. Fair enough. Councillor Derbyshire.
I just wondered, then can we attach that to this motion? That our fees will go up in accordance with the COLA if we're going to approve that this early? And then at least that way we're covering the increase. But that'd be up to.
Yeah, CAO.
Through your worship to council. So council will, we have our fees and charges bylaw that usually passes. So we won't be able to set fees until the QP negotiations are complete. So if council, we have fees starting in January. So I guess my question is, if council, we can always revisit the fees and charges bylaw after QP negotiations are finished to reflect those changes.
Councillor Pelkman.
Yes, I would say that's an appropriate way of dealing with that. And I mean, we can look at it in broad strokes, revenue lines versus expense lines in the budget. So.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none. Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Sorry, I just had one more question. When do we normally apply for these positions, and have we ever had a hard time actually filling all the positions?
Director Littlemore. Or sorry, well, Director Payne. Most of them are in Rob's area.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through the chair to Councillor Derbyshire. Traditionally, I'll give you this year, we started recruiting in January. The number of positions here takes us about 6 months. From an HR perspective, from start to onboarding, takes us about 6 months to fill everything. Have we filled everything? We have come into, over the last couple of years, shortages of lifeguards. It's getting more and more competitive from lifeguards. Other municipalities keep paying more, City of London, different, so they're drawing a few away from us. That's traditionally a tougher one, lifeguards. Mostly for the other positions, we do a really good job of filling. But there's we had no vacancies out of here last year. I think there was an exception of one junior lifeguard we didn't fill, just because we didn't have nobody to fill it. But all these positions listed in front of you were filled.
Okay. Follow up, then we'll bring it to a vote.
So I guess that would then be my question. If we're looking at this, then should we actually be maybe looking at increasing the salary for our lifeguards? Like, is that something we do, or is that something you do on your own? Or is there a thing we have set out to make sure that we get enough of these people in a timely fashion? Or you know,
Through the chair to Councilor Derbyshire, great question. That is a strategy for sure. So the grid, so once we apply the COLA, if council so desires, we could put an increase specifically on that position or that position line, if that so choose. And HR, we can provide data what's happening in the market around us for sure. Like I said, last year I think we were down one junior lifeguard, but everything else resonated. We did fill the vacancy, so, but that can be done, yes.
Okay. So we have, sorry, Councilor Palmer.
Yeah, I just have a question, because I feel like at CDAC, the presentation being made by the department is showing a huge increase in uptake in enrollments in camps and programs. So I'm a little confused as to how you're not adding any staff, and I certainly hope we're not overburdening the staff that are there or going into some sort of possible safety concerns because they've got 20 kids instead of 10 kids. So could you just clarify that for me?
So, through the chair to Councilor Palmer, if council would remember, we came back last year and asked for 5 additional summer camp staff because we saw that increase in registrations. That is included in the number that Director Payne has presented. If we see an increase again in that trajectory of continuing to grow, we would come back to council again, looking for permission to hire some additional staff, just to make sure that we keep the ratios acceptable.
Okay, with that, we have a second motion in front of you that we approve option 2, the recruitment and hiring of all listed 2025 seasonal positions. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Next meeting is on Monday, December 9th, 2024 at 5 o'clock. Motion to adjourn at 6:52. Councilor Kennis, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried.